Hmm. Ah, greetings everyone. It is I, Tekking101, and my brick companion Barry. Just enjoying a casually elegant glass of wine today, for we are talking about the most elegant swordsman in all of One Piece. That's right, Dracule, I am totally not a vampire, Mihawk. And he truly is elegant, of course. No spoilers for Dr. Stone, but there's a particular character in Dr. Stone in the manga that would find him exceptionally elegant. Like, he'll kill you from a distance and reduce you to a bunch of bloody meat chunks, but he'll do so elegantly, which basically means he'll do that while drinking a glass of wine, which makes anything elegant. This is not wine. This is, original cranberry juice cocktail, which I have to say is still very delicious. And it's got a lot of vitamin, well, it's got a lot of vitamin sugar, I'll tell you that right now. Ooh, I should probably go easy on that. I already get enough of that from the iced tea. Okay, so, Zoro was pretty awesome in the last chapter, right? Chapter 1009, okay. He's facing down the gauntlet. The gauntlet in this case is Big Mom and Kaido rearing back and launching a giant air pressure ki blast cannon attack right at the supernovas, right? And Zoro, I think in one part he's like, alright, I'm gonna try to block this attack with Enma and my Haki so that the others can get away from the blast. And I think another part of him is like, I really want to see if I can block this attack. Somebody noted in the comments section that Big Mom is technically a swordsman. Or a swordswoman, I should say. Kaido, not too much. Kaido uses a kanabo, okay? Zoro's not trying to be the greatest kanabo user in the entire world. He's trying to be the greatest swordsman in the world, okay? And so Big Mom uses a sword. Granted, it's a talking sword that turns from a hat into a sword and then a flaming long sword. So I don't even know what to believe anymore with Napoleon. But it does resemble a sword, so I think Zoro was just like, alright, well, she does use a sword. I gotta block this attack. I'm required to, right? Okay? If I want to be the greatest swordsman, might as well knock this out right here. He's like, bam, I deflected one of Big Mom's sword attacks. Alright, so there you go. I'm worthy of the title now, right? Also in the review, I brought up the question of, hey, what if Mihawk was actually there? Would he have been able to block the attack? I feel like Mihawk would have been capable, but he would have had to put a lot of oomph into it, right? It wouldn't have been as easy as he defeated Zoro at, like, the Baratier, like he just takes out Yoru and just slices the attack in half. No, I feel like in that moment, Mihawk would have had to put his game face on. He sees a joint attack from two Yonko coming at him. I mean, even Mihawk would be a little bit, you know, afraid there. Like, whoa, okay, this is gonna be a big mama. Get it? Because Big Mom. Okay. Also, you have to remember, the Yonko don't even work together most of the time. I think they have like a monthly book club where they get together and discuss things. I think Pride and Prejudice is this month. But other than that, the Yonko never get together, right? So the idea of Big Mom and Kaido launching a combo attack, not something you see very often in the One Piece world, between any Yonko, really. So, you know, Kaido and Big Mom launch an attack against Mihawk. Mihawk's gonna, like, have to, like, plant his feet on the ground, two hands on Yoru, hockey everything up, really, like, laser focus on the attack. But I think he would have been able to, like, either slice it in half, you know, sending it in, like, opposite directions, or he would have been able to block it and maybe just, like, parry the attack, sort of, like, and then just, boom, like, knock it up into the sky, into, like, low Earth orbit, like what happened when he, you know, deflected. No, it was actually, that was when Jozu deflected Mihawk's technique at Marineford, but something similar to that. But I think Mihawk would have been capable. But hey, Zoro was able to block it for a whole second, and I feel like wherever Mihawk is at right now in the world, probably slicing up a bunch of marine battleships outside of Gloomy Island, he sensed what happened with the attack on Kaido and Big Mom, Zoro blocking it, and he just smiled. You know, he's like slicing down all of the marine battleships. Marines are charging onto his island trying to bring him in because the warlord system is abolished. Like, Dracula Mihawk, we'll bring you in! Mihawk doesn't even bother using the sword. He just, like, stares at them. He probably has Conquerors Hockey. He's the greatest swordsman in the world, so why wouldn't he, right? So he's knocking all these Marines out. Other Marines that are maybe a little bit stronger that get close to him, he doesn't even use the blade. He just takes the pummel. He takes this big gem right here at the end of Yoru and just smacks him in the forehead and just knocks him down. Meanwhile, you got, like, some vice admirals on the ships that are just like Dracula Mihawk, you will surrender to the Marines! I will send wave after wave of all the infantry we have if it means to bring you in! Meanwhile, Mihawk's just like, seriously? Bring me in. You're devoting this much time to bringing me in. Dude, I wasn't even doing the pirate stuff most of the time. Most of the time I was hanging out here in my island just sipping wine. I made some sangria last week with this ghost girl that's living with me. That you're coming after me? All right. And he just like starts slicing everything down. And then he just has that little observation sense of just like Zoro blocking the attack on the other side of the world. And Mihawk's just, I knew he had it in him. Shing! He's like continuing like fighting everybody. He's fighting like a vice admiral while he's thinking, yes, Zoro, continue on your path. Anyway, back to it, right? So, today we're going to be talking about the training that Zoro actually underwent at Gloomy Island with Mihawk, okay? Because I want to talk about some stuff here. First thing, let's talk about the eye again. You know, Zoro's eye has the scar, and everybody always likes to talk about the eye. Actually, I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about the eye right now in recent years, but right after the time skip and for quite a number of years before Zoro really got into some serious fights with characters, we all thought that the eye was going to be super relevant. Like, he's going to open the eye, and it's going to have like a demon eye or something, you know, some sort of, maybe it's not necessarily like a Naruto Sharingan kind of deal, it's the Rinnegan kind of deal. No, but some people thought like, okay, well maybe it's like a self-imposed handicap, like he has the scar over his eye, so we're supposed to think that like he lost the eye, but in reality maybe it's just a thing that like, you know, he's supposed to keep his eyes shut and that increases his battle prowess, and then when he gets really serious against a serious enemy that's super seriously, then he opens the other eye and it's like, whoa, and then he's like even twice as strong. You know, that's a standard anime trope. It's like Yusuke when he was fighting Toguro, he had the aura handcuffs on, you know, or Rock Lee with the leg weights. You know, Zoro just fights with half of his vision obscured for like the last few months against like, you know, Monet and Horty Jones and Pika and everybody, right? But I think, like, I guess it doesn't put it to rest 100%, but when face down between two Yonko, you got Big Mom riding on top of Zeus and Prometheus, giant fireball in one hand, giant flaming sword in the other, riding on a crazy thundercloud, and then you got a half dragon, half duck, half fish, you know, on the other side with a giant kanabo that can breathe lightning and fire, and those two are blasting a huge freaking final flash right at your face. You'd think if there was ever a moment where Zoro was faced with life or death, and it's like, okay, I gotta bust out my final move here, I gotta open my other eye and activate the demon powers that lie within Kamui, you know? If there was ever a moment for that guy to bust that out, it would be right there. And he didn't. Alright? You think at any other point during this battle, because they're very clearly having a rough time. All of Zoro's other battles up until this point, you could say he wasn't going 100%, right? Like, obviously, after the time skip, you get the impression, even against Horty Jones, who was the main villain of the Fishman Island arc, you'd feel like when he cut down Horty, he didn't even care. And then there was the Hyozo, who was the blue-ringed octopus merman that used his sword style. Zoro really didn't put a lot of effort into him either. In fact, he called Hyozo like, you know, you're like a big fish in a small pond, or like the big frog on the pond or something. Like, your sword skills are impressive at Fishman Island, but the world is a lot bigger and I'm way above you. I'm way above your class, okay? Then he fought against Monet at Punk Hazard, which didn't even need Hockey to defeat her, so he wasn't taking that very seriously. Even Pika. Pika was like the first opponent during the time skip where Zoro actually had to bust out Hockey on his blades. But just because he busted out Hockey on his blades doesn't mean he was going 100%, okay? And you get the more impression that Zoro was just annoyed at Pika, because Pika had that really frustrating ability to, like, merge with the stone and pop out, so Zoro's fighting him, and then he just decides to leave, and Zoro's like, hey, get back here! God, this guy's annoying to fight. So, maybe if nothing else, Zoro just went into his Hockey and, like, you know, Ichi Dai Sansen Daisen Sakai, just because of how annoying this dude was, right? You don't get the impression he was really pushed to the brink, like, physically and Hockey-wise, and like, his swordsmanship. Like, Zoro was obviously way better at Hockey, way better at swordsmanship than Pika. It's just that Pika had a really freaking annoying devil fruit, okay? And now, finally, we're here, facing off against two Yonko. This is, like, the first point since the time skip, since Zoro's training with Mihawk, where you actually get the impression of, okay, he is being pushed to the brink now. This is Zoro at like maximum power, okay? When he's blocking that attack, that was putting everything he had into it. All of the haki. When he was picking up Enma and channeling all that haki into it to attack Kaido, that was putting all he had really into it, okay? That was Zoro at max output, all right? And he's pretty banged up right now, but at any rate, so the way Mihawk trained him, at least from what we understand, we have two scenes. One of them is filler, and one of them is canon, okay? The filler scene is right after Zoro bows down before Mihawk, and asks him to train him, and Mihawk just kind of like, looks at him like, oh, you're so pathetic, Roanoa. Stand up, leave my island. I don't want anything to do with you. You couldn't even defeat the baboons or the human drills, and you come here asking for me to train you, your enemy. How pathetic could you be? And Zoro was like, I actually did defeat them. You're the only person left on the island, but I know I can't defeat you, and I know I can't go back to my friends because I'm not strong enough, so really there's only one way to solve this that I can see, and that's for you to train me. So in the anime, in the filler scene, they walk outside of the castle to begin Zoro's training. He's all bandaged up, and Mihawk mentions there's one more human drill on the island that you've yet to defeat, and this giant hulking King Kong, except if he was a baboon, walks out of the freaking woods, and he's got a giant replica of Mihawk's Yoru on his back, and Mihawk's like, he's not like the other ones. You should probably be a bit cautious. He's the boss of all the human drills on this island, and he learned to fight by directly watching what I do. Alright, now obviously this baboon wouldn't have the level of like haki or anything like Mihawk, literally just observing Mihawk and using a giant sword as a replica of Yoru. It's obviously not made out of the same material, it's not a black blade or anything, but still, you should probably be cautious. And so that scene ends with Zoro clashing with the boss of the human drills, and that's like the first step of his training. And Zoro even mentions that as he was charging toward it, like, you're nothing but a stepping stone, baboon, and then he charges, right? Okay, now that was in the anime, but I feel like that could conceivably have happened in the manga, right? Like, it was an entire island filled with human drills. I feel like the human drills probably factored a little bit into Zoro's training, at least his initial stages of training, right? He was able to defeat them, but it was pretty rough. It would probably be like, alright, well, those human drills really took a lot out of me. I barely could defeat the lower class ones. Now, after they heal, like, let's fight again, and it gets easier every time. Might be something like that, right? And then the scene in the manga that we know of, the canon scene, was when he was fighting against Pika, and after he sliced Pika down with the Ichi Dai Sansen Daisen Sekai, he checked his blades, and he's like, if there's any chips or nicks in the blades, and there was none, and he's like, okay, good. And then he has a flashback to when Mihawk was teaching him how to use that, and you get the impression that Mihawk's teaching, unlike Rayleigh's teaching to Luffy about hockey, was probably a lot more indirect. Rayleigh had this thing where he was like tying the cloth around Luffy's eyes, the blindfold. There we go. You ever just try to think of a word and it's just, okay, what's that thing called? Blindfold. There we go. Puts the blindfold around Luffy's face and tries to hit him with the stick and everything like that. I don't see Mihawk doing anything like that. Like, this is how I imagine Mihawk trained Zoro in observation hockey. Because Zoro knew a little bit about observation, like when he fought Daz Bones at Alabasta, like the idea of, like, that the blade can cut everything but also cuts nothing. In truth, the blade will only cut what you decide to cut. You hear the voice of the things you want to cut, right? So Zoro knew a little bit about observation, but obviously I think it was his training on Gloomy Island that really, with Mihawk, that brought it to a whole other level, right? So I feel like the way that Mihawk would have trained Zoro in observation would be like, just walk out, he's swirling some wine or cranberry juice or whatever the hell Mihawk's into, and he's like, okay, Roronoa, you're training today, hand me all your swords. He's like, what? Hand me all your swords. But I'm training to be stronger as a swordsman. It's like, I know. Hand me all your swords. So Zoro's like, okay. Careful with Shusui. It's pretty old. I know. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, shut your eyes. Okay. It's like, all right. Now, I've provoked about 300 of those human drills this morning to come to this location and attack you viciously. You are not allowed to open your eyes. You can't use your swords. The goal of today's training is to dodge every single attack from them. Zoro would just be like, Don't some of those human drills use rifles? Oh yes, absolutely. And they've upgraded them quite a bit. I think I saw a few of them with some 50 caliber sniper rifles. There's also swords, spears, bazookas, knives, arrows, crossbows. They pretty much got everything. I actually just opened up the armory to the castle and let them go wild in there. So, yes, take one hit. If I even see a speck of blood, you're not getting any booze tonight. All right, Perona, let's go work on the garden. like, come on now. You could see him doing that kind of stuff, right? Mihawk, I mean, I still feel the reason that Zoro got the scar on his eye, that was the final part of his training. Like, the last thing Zoro did before he left the Gloomy Island and went back to Sabaody with Perona was spar with Mihawk. After 2 years of indirectly training him through different methods, you know, like the Mr. Miyagi method, basically, wax on, wax off, that kind of deal. Finally, like, it was maybe a month or two before the 2 years was up, before he had to travel back to Sabaody. That was when Mihawk finally decided, okay, I will spar with you. All right, now I don't know if that means he used Yoru, or if I'm sure Mihawk, I mean, the castle probably does have a pretty big armory. It's a castle, after all, and I'm sure maybe he has some other katanas in there that are more like standard katanas, like regular, like a Wasamona, Rio Wasamona, or whatever. So maybe Mihawk fought him with that. Maybe Mihawk fought him with the little cross pendant necklace, except this time Zoro was able to break it. Or something. Like, that was the training. Like, he steps out after 2 years, and he pulls out the cross pendant, and he's like, this was the blade that bested you 2 years ago at the Baratier. I could have honestly defeated you with this back then. Actually, what am I doing? I actually own that. You know, what am I doing? Okay, hold on. The reason I buy all this One Piece crap. Okay, here we go. Yes. He's like, this little pocket knife that I used to eat my takoyaki, which is canon. We actually do see that in a cover page. He eats his takoyaki with this. Was able to best you at the Baratier. For your final step of training, you must best this blade as I fight you. And so he's like clashing with Zoro. Zoro's still using his Santoryu. He's got Shusui, Sandai, and Wado. And freaking, he's learned hockey at this point. Mihawk hockeys up this little pendant. And he's like clashing with Zoro. And then maybe this is the thing that's gonna cause the scar on Zoro's eye. Or whatever. He's clashing with them. And at the end of the training, maybe Zoro was able to break this. You know, this little pocket knife or necklace knife that Mihawk had in his possession. And that's when Mihawk realized, he's like, training passed. You've succeeded. I'm so proud of you, yes. Now get the hell off my island. You know, I can finally get some peace and quiet around here. Right? Maybe it was that, or maybe Mihawk used a more standard katana, not Yoru, but maybe there's that, okay? I feel like, you know, maybe I guess it could have been. Zoro already has one scar on his body from Yoru. I guess his eye scar could have been from Yoru as well, right? Very possible. But I feel like that's how the training went. Mostly indirect, and then at the very end was something substantial, okay? So yeah, that's how probably observation hockey training went. Very indirect, probably involving the human drills. Maybe even involving Perona, because Perona could make the ghosts. So it's like, you know, your task today, Roanora, is to dodge all of the ghost woman's negative ghosts. And if any of them pass through you, you'll become instantly pessimistic. So your job is to, like, you know, no sight, no sound, and still dodge the ghosts. Maybe something of that nature that Mihawk would have incorporated into it. Because I feel like, for the most part, Mihawk, I mean, there might have been a few days where Mihawk was like, alright, I'll train him today. But for 2 years, it seems like there's some days where Zoro would have woke up like a kid on Christmas, just like, Mihawk, are we gonna go train today? And he's just like, ugh, I really don't feel... Alright, go outside and cut up the fog. What? Yeah, the fog. You know how this whole island is covered with fog? Go outside and cut up the fog so it can no longer be foggy on the island. If you do that until sunset, and then I'll give you a passing grade for today. And Zoro goes outside, tries to cut up the fog for like 12 hours, and he just can't do it. And he walks in, and he's just like, I'm sorry. I could not master this fog cutting technique. And Zoro just really looks like, you know, beat up, like he just couldn't do it. And Mihawk's like, oh, that's because it's impossible. You're an idiot if you thought you could cut fog. It's water vapor, dude. You cut it and it comes right back in. I just didn't want to, you know, I just wasn't in the mood today. I just wanted to hang out today and just drink some wine, okay? You know, tomorrow we'll do something else, you know? So I imagine a lot of it was like that. Then we have the scene with armament hockey where Mihawk was like, you know, you cannot drink a single drop of alcohol until you've perfected this technique. And you know what? In that moment, they mentioned the Kokuto. They mentioned the black blades, right? And Mihawk's like, you know, did any of your blades ever break before this? And Zoro's like, yeah, a few of them did. Hell, you even broke 2 of them back at the East. Remember that? And Mihawk's like, yes, I do recall that. You see, if it was the same exact swords, same exact class, but if they were Kokuto, if they were black blades, blades, those same swords would not have shattered, okay? And I refuse to believe at that moment there is no way that Zoro and Mihawk did not have a discussion about the Shusui. Alright, because it was literally a blade that was an Owazamono wielded by Ryuma that is, in fact, a black blade in of itself, okay? It's the same as Yoru. And there's not very many of these in the world from what we understand. Even Enma and Ame no Habakiri are not permanent Kokutos, okay? So that's something really important to keep in mind. These are very rare. And so I refuse to believe Mihawk and Zoro did not have a conversation about that. I hope that we do get one at some point. Like, there's a flashback to it. Like, maybe after the war is over and everything, Zoro's gonna go to, you know, Ryuma's grave where Shusui was left. And I believe Zoro is going to keep Enma. He's not going to take back Shusui or anything, but he's gonna go visit Ryuma's grave and the Shusui one more time. Maybe we'll see a blue Jedi ghost of Ryuma over the grave, and maybe we can have a flashback when Zoro was training on Gloomy Island with Mihawk, where they had a conversation about that. Mihawk, I mean, he's not as much of a sword nerd as, like, Tashigi is, but he still probably knows a lot about the lore and whatever, especially when it comes to, like, really rare swords. Like, Ryuma was wielded by a guy with the epithet of Sword God. Sword God Ryuma. I imagine Mihawk might have read a little bit about him in some history book somewhere, or might have heard the word, you know, in the breeze. It has been like 400 years, but still, I mean, yeah. So maybe, like, you know, Zoro shows him Shusui, and Mihawk is just like, interesting, that is a Kokuto, that is a black blade. Where did you acquire this sword? He's like, oh yeah, well, we went to an island, which was actually a boat, but it's also an island, and there was a talking skeleton there. He's part of our crew now, long story, of course, yes. And you see, there was a zombie samurai there from Wano country, and I killed him again, and he gave me this sword. And maybe Mihawk would have heard, it's like, it was this samurai, what was his name? And he's like, I think Ryuma. He's like, oh, okay, that is something very important you have there. And then maybe they talked a little bit about Kokutos and maybe how they were made or whatever. I guess they didn't talk about how they were made, because Zoro, when he was talking to Tenguyama Hitetsu and Wano, he didn't really seem to understand how you turn something into a black blade. Like, Tenguyama was, like, explaining that concept to him. So maybe Mihawk didn't explain everything, but he was just like, well, suffice to say, this Shusui that you own is the same as my Yoru. So it is a black blade, all right? But it was not a black blade that you forged yourself. It was something you picked up from somebody else. So it's different from when you use someone else's sword to when you make a black blade of your own. Like if he changed the Wado into a black blade, it would be a completely different kind of ballpark, that sort of deal. So how did he exactly train with armament? I'm not really sure. Probably involving the human drills again. Maybe cutting up the trees or the mountains on Gloomy Island or something, you know, like just really focusing really hard, focusing on the armament, and then attacking the human drills or attacking the mountains, you know, slicing up a lot of damage or something like that. Because it really did seem like Mihawk just walked out and just like, all right, here's the basic understanding of armament hockey. You can't drink any booze until you're done. All right, I'm gonna go inside now and watch some Happy Days, I guess. Henry Winkler, you know, it's just hilarious. And so he leaves, and then he has to do that on his own. What about Conquerors Hockey? Because you know, Mihawk, he probably has Conquerors, like I said. Would he have taught anything about that to Zoro? I don't know if he would have taught Conquerors to Zoro in, like, because it's one of those things that's like, look, it's either you have it or you don't, right? It's not like something you can train through. Mihawk might have taught him a little bit about the basics, like how to maybe, like what it is. Like, so if you ever encounter an opponent that has like a really strong aura about them and they give you the stare, yeah, they probably have Conquerors Hockey. You should be wary of that, all right? If you have a strong will, you're able to resist it, but it really comes down to how strong the opponent is with Conquerors Hockey. It's pretty rare. Not a lot of people have it. I have it. Shanks has it. Maybe you can get it. Luffy, like Zoro probably would have heard, like, oh yeah, Luffy used that at the auction house. It's like, all right, so he probably has that too. Makes sense. You know, and also Mihawk fought against Luffy at the war, so he would probably have a pretty good, you know, first-hand experience. Like, yeah, your captain probably does have an aptitude for, like, Conquerors Hockey or whatever. But if you do, that's up to you. That's up to if you can, you know, unlock that power on your own. I can't teach you that. But maybe Mihawk taught him about, like, what the name of it is, what it is, and what to expect if you're affected by it. That sort of stuff, you know, so he understands in the future, right? So, not so much on Conquerors, but yeah, when it comes to observation and armament, probably very indirect. And then at the very end of the training, that's when he actually picked up Yoru or his crossblade, and then was just like, all right, let's train now in earnest. And then shing shing, and then whoever, you know, if you succeed, then you can go and be with your, you can leave. Maybe considering the way that Mihawk was like restricting alcohol, maybe that, because that's like, here's the thing. Mihawk, we do not know much about his past, but maybe he sees a lot of Zoro in himself. You know what I mean? Like, Mihawk, maybe back in his younger years when he was training to be the strongest swordsman in the world, like, why did Mihawk want that? Why did he want to be the strongest? Maybe the goal was very similar to, like, you know, not Mihawk, Zoro and Kuina. Like, maybe he had a friend growing up, Mihawk did, that died, or something happened to them, or maybe they couldn't wield a sword anymore or something, and it was up to Mihawk to like carry on their legacy, and that's why he wanted to become the greatest swordsman in the world. And now that he is the greatest swordsman, it's not that he's bored, because there are some things that entertain him, and he seems like the kind of guy that really just wants to be left alone most of the time. Like, that's when he's his happiest, when he's just like sitting at home just drinking wine or whatever, just quiet. But you know, he's not bored, but he's just kind of like, there's no one that can, you know, compare to me. The only person that could compare to my power was Shanks, and he's missing an arm now, so fighting him's not going to be any fun. So I'm kind of just, you know, not bored, but I'm looking for, you know, opponents that can challenge me. And he found that in Zoro as somebody that's like, maybe Zoro could surpass me. Also, especially, you have to look at the age gap. You know, Mihawk's in his early 40s, Zoro's only in his early 20s, he's only 21 years old. So it's like, you know, it might be a thing where Mihawk looks at Zoro and says, you know, Zoro is way stronger than I was at that age. So he has the potential, still weaker than I am right now, but at that age, that's pretty impressive that he could, you know, get to that level, like the Ashura and the Hockey and everything. So yeah, it might have been a thing where right at the end, he's like, your final challenge will be to fight me, to duel me in one-on-one single combat. And if you fail this test, if I don't feel you're up to my 2 years of indirect training, I will not allow you. I will not permit you to leave this island. And Mihawk is like, you know, I can stop you if I wanted to, right? I'm strong enough to stop you from leaving this island. And maybe Mihawk said that as like a drive for Zoro to be like, if I don't beat him, I won't be able to go back to the Straw Hat crew. And maybe Mihawk might have thrown in a line of like, hey, listen, you asked me to be your master. You asked me to train you, all right? You put aside your own goals and ambitions, all right, for this one purpose, all right? So you will listen to my, you know, my orders when it comes to this training, right? And so maybe Zoro agreed, like, I will do that, and he's like, okay, and let's fight. And then Zoro managed to succeed, and then he went out to sea with Perona, and then went back to Sabaody, and he met back up with everybody, right? But yeah, that was probably how most of that training went. I believe there was probably a few other funny moments between Mihawk and Zoro during that 2 years. That would have been rather interesting to see. That's actually perfect ground for, like, side stories, right? Like, if there ever wants to be like a filler arc of One Piece, like every time we get fillers in One Piece, they don't usually last very long, you know what I mean? They only last like an episode or two, or they're movie tie-ins or OVAs or something. But the next time there's any necessary reason to have a One Piece filler, or like a 2-3 episode, you know, whatever, cutaway from the action, I would be okay if you just show us how they trained. Because you got to figure, like, it's been over 10 years now, right? It's been over 10 years since the time skip. And I don't think Oda is going to go into great detail with how they all trained. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to have like a whole flashback of like, all right, here's what Nami did for 2 years on Weatheria. And here's another little mini arc where Usopp trained with Heracles on the Boeing Archipelago, right? So I think there is some ground here to be like, all right, we can have one filler episode that like showed Zoro training with Mihawk, and then another one that trained, you know, like the Wizards of Weatheria teaching Nami about the weather balls or whatever. Like, you know, you could have stuff like that as like a little mini filler arc, and I would enjoy that. I would enjoy that a lot more than like a standard filler arc in One Piece, which is usually just like Luffy runs into like, I'm a big tough bounty hunter, I'm gonna beat your ass. And Luffy's like, no you won't. Bam! He's like, damn it, he beat my ass! It's just like, and then that's it, you know? Like, you could do a little bit more stuff with the canon here. Maybe they're afraid to, honestly. Maybe they're afraid to mess with the canon of the story too much because of, you know, how great One Piece is. You don't want to mess anything up, but, you know, I think you could throw a few things in there on the training, and it doesn't have to be every single solitary thing they learned, but, like, you know, you could throw some stuff. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, I think Zoro is at max power right now. He's pushing past his limits. He's probably got some eternal bleeding and some like maybe a ruptured lung or something, because he was coughing up a lot of blood at the end of that last chapter. All right, he's not gonna be able just to stand back up and, like, you know, spit some blood out the side of his mouth and just be like, "Pachoo, I'm good, let's do this." You know, like, no, this is gonna hit him. Like, this might come down to the moment where, like, Zoro, is about to deal an attack on Kaido. He's like, "It's over, Kaido, you're..." And then he just can't make it, and then he falters or something. Like, it really might come down to that. You know, there's gonna be a point, like, it's not right now, but there's probably gonna get to a point where Zoro and Luffy, Kid, Law, Killer, they're gonna run out of gas here. They're gonna run out of gas, and they're not gonna be able to move anymore. And I think Kaido and Big Mom, well, Big Mom's out of the fight for right now anyway, but I think Kaido's just got a lot more stamina than they do, right? And granted, it's 5-on-1, but there might be a point where Zoro just can't fight anymore, right? And he's got, like, he, like, unleashes one last final epic attack, Santoryu ultimate Ogi, you know, technique or whatever, but then he just passes out and he just can't fight anymore. He's like, my arms are like lead, I can't move them. I'm like, oh, that's not good. All right, well, you know, we'll take it from here, Zoro. It might be something like that. Maybe he even emulated one of Mihawk's techniques. Mihawk, I don't think, has any named techniques. I think techniques that are named in, like, video games, but nothing in the canon of the manga. Like, he's never called something like, you know, I think there was that move he used against Whitebeard that was, like, the world's strongest slash, but I don't think that's his official name. I think that was just, like, the title of Mihawk being the strongest swordsman, so every slash he makes is the world's strongest slash, right, in the hands of Mihawk and Yoru, right? So if maybe Zoro, you know, memorized one of his techniques and then, you know, used it against Kaido, maybe something like that. Also, remember the scene, and I'll end it out with this. Remember the scene right after the time skip. It was the first time we saw Zoro after the time skip. He slices that galleon in half, which mirrors that one time that Mihawk arrived at his first introduction, slicing down the Dreadnought Saber, Krieg's flagship. But in the manga, in the first run of the manga, I think it was fixed in the tankobons. It might have been. But the sword that Zoro uses to slice the galleon was Shusui, but Oda messed up the scabbard of Shusui. Instead of the cherry blossom petal design, it was a cross, which made it very similar looking to Law's Kikoku, right? And this was an error, and it was stated to be an error, and later on you see it in the regular scabbard, it always was. But at the time, when I read that chapter for the first time, I didn't think it was an error. I actually looked at that and I thought, oh, Zoro must have modified Shusui's scabbard to look like the crosses because that's an homage to Mihawk. Mihawk has the cross sword, and he has the cross pendant, right? So after training for 2 years with Mihawk, Zoro decided to change up the scabbard of Shusui, just the scabbard, not the blade or anything, just the scabbard, you know, painted over the cherry blossoms and then made the cross. I thought that would have been cool, like an homage to Mihawk. No, that's not what happened, but I think it would have fit, and I think Zoro definitely picked a lot of stuff up from him, okay? Either directly or indirectly. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Go get yourself a nice, well, not wine, cranberry juice, just, you know, lots of sugar in this. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Tekking signing out.